Hello, world and universe. Welcome to the Trevor Donald Experience. Manifest your truth. Well, for those who follow my channel, I did a previous video a while back, a few weeks ago, a month or so ago, about the origins of the Republican Party. And many people don't know that several black men and several white Southern Unionists started the Republican Party. So yes, black folks started the Republican Party around the time of Reconstruction of 1867, around that time, 1867, around the Reconstruction era. And now today I want to do a follow-up with the origins of the Democratic Party and its complex history with race. So I'm an independent, but I want to give some historical facts about the Republican Party, and now let's get into the origins of the Democratic Party. And I think some people will be surprised. A lot of blacks today vote based on identity politics. There was a pendulum switch in the early 60s where blacks during Reconstruction and Jim Crow voted Republican, and then they switched to the Democratic Party around the 60s and have been voting Democrat blindly ever since. And I believe in voting with the power of the pen, voting with your head and not your heart, analyzing these politicians and how they have legislated or passed bills and laws that have either benefited you or held you back. I think that's the way you should vote. So let's get into the Democratic Party's origin and its complex history with race. Who founded the Democratic Party? The Democratic Party was founded around 1828 by supporters of Andrew Jackson, making it the oldest active political party in the world, the Democratic Party. Andrew Jackson himself was a slave owner and the architect of the brutal Indian Removal Act. You gotta look that up. The Indian Removal Act, which forced Native Americans off their lands. So yes, from its earliest days, the Democratic Party's founding figures held deeply racist views by modern standards. So in the antebellum South, in slavery, through the mid-1800s, the Democratic Party was broadly the party most aligned with protecting slavery. Southern Democrats wanted slavery to continue. This is going to lead up to the Civil War and the Abraham Lincoln. So please follow, share, like this story. The party most aligned with protecting slavery. Southern Democrats were the loudest defenders of the slave system, Southern Democrats, while the newly formed Republican Party, which was founded around 1854, 1867, one of those dates during Reconstruction, so the Republican Party was formed, and it ran on a platform of stopping the expansion of slavery. So the Republican Party wanted to stop slavery. The Democratic Party wanted slavery to continue. It was big business. Abraham Lincoln, who was a Republican, won the 1960 election, which triggered Southern secession and the Civil War. So what is the KKK and the post-Civil War South? What did it look like? And what did the KKK have to do with Southern Democrat or the Democratic Party? Yes, the original Ku Klux Klan, founded in 1865, 1866 in Pulaski, Tennessee, was deeply intertwined with the post-war Southern Democratic establishment. Its founding figures included ex-Confederate General Nathan Bedford Forrest. The Klan functioned as a terrorist arm that used violence to suppress black voting rights, undermine Reconstruction, and restore democratic political control in the South. That's what the Ku Klux Klan, they were a terrorist arm back in the day to suppress black voters. and the black vote. The connection between the Klan and the Democratic Party in the South during this era is historically well documented and undeniable. So, moving forward past that in Reconstruction and Jim Crow, after Reconstruction ended in 1877, Southern Democrats established Jim Crow laws, the system of racial segregation and disenfranchisement that lasted nearly a century, nearly 100 years, Jim Crow, to disenfranchise blacks and to keep the system of racial segregation going. The Democratic Solid South was built on white supremacy and the suppression of black political participation. So what was the critical turning point? The 20th century realignment. Here's where the story becomes essential to understand it fully. The party's ideological realigned over the course of the 20th century. So this is where it started with this realignment and the switch from blacks being Republican to becoming Democrat. FDR's New Deal in the 1930s, and remember FDR is Franklin D. Roosevelt. FDR's New Deal in the 1930s began attracting black voters to the Democratic Party for economic reasons, even while Southern segregationists remained Democrat. They remained Democrat. Henry Truman desegregated the military in 1948, causing Southern Democrats, Dixiecrats, causing Southern Democrats, what were called Dixiecrats, to vote and run their own presidential candidate, who was Strom Thurmond back in the day. Strom Thurmond. Harry Truman allowed blacks to join the military, so that desegregated the military around 1948, and Southern Democrats were pissed off. So then you had the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965, championed by Democratic President LBJ, Lyndon B. Johnson. Remember, he was the vice president of John F. Kennedy that got assassinated. So Lyndon Johnson, he caused a massive rupture. Southern white segregationists began a decades-long migration to the Republican Party. So during the early 60s, during LGB's time, Lyndon Johnson's time, that's when white Southern segregationist Democrats moved to the Republican Party. There was a switch. And Strom Thurmond was the main messenger behind this switch. So Strom Thurmond, the most prominent Dixiecrat, switched to the Republican Party in 1964. Many others followed him. Richard Nixon's Southern strategy of 1968 to 1972 was a deliberate Republican effort to attract racially resentful white Southern voters to the Republican Party, and it worked. So by the 1990s to the 2000s, the realignment was essentially complete. You had white Southern segregationists that were Democrat doing Reconstruction, and by 1960, they jumped to the Republican Party, and blacks who were Republican jumped to the Democratic Party. The states that were once the Confederate segregationist Democratic strongholds became solidly Republican, which is where they remain today. So the bottom line, yes, the Democratic Party was founded by figures who were slaveholders and white supremacists. And the Southern Democratic Party was the institutional home of segregationists, the KKK's political allies, and Jim Crow for roughly a century, 100 years. Number two, yes, the original KKK had strong ties to the post-Civil War Southern Democratic Party and served to restore democratic political control through terror and fear. Number three, however, the party that carries those historical sins is ideologically unrecognizable today compared to today's Democratic Party. The people, the politicians, and the ideology that made up the racist Southern democracy largely moved to the Republican Party after 1964, a shift that both parties' historians acknowledge and accept today. This is why the phrase "the party switched" is historically accurate in broad strokes, even if it is oversimplified. The geography, the voters, and the politicians of the old racist South are politically aligned with the Republican Party today. So the Democrats of the past are now the Republicans of today, not the Democrat. And now the Republicans of the past, the Black Republicans, are the Democrats of today. Both parties have histories worth examining honestly, and neither should get to selectively claim or disown this historical fact. Tell me what you think. This has been the Trevor Donald Experience. Manifest your truth in a positive, righteous, and God-fearing way. There was a party switch. Old Democrats, Southern Democrats, segregation and racists have become now the Republican Party. Old Republican blacks, conservatives, trying to end racism, slavery back during the Reconstruction time were Republican. And now today, as of 1960, 1964, black folks jumped from the Republican Party and now are part of the Democratic base. Tell me what you think. This has been the Trevor Donald Experience.